Feeling good. Coming alive into the podcast.
Are you now? A minute ago you said you weren't feeling that alive, but it's August 11th.
That could be our topic. I got a topic.
Yeah, you got one now. It's August 11th, 2022. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron podcast, and this is episode 607.
Yep, all day.
All day. Is it all day? Yeah, it's 10 o'clock. It's a cooler day here in Overland Park, Kansas. I know you just told me before we went live you were in, I think, a parka and a toboggan with some earmuffs on this morning. Things have got a little bit cooler in Wisconsin. You're enjoying the lake weather. It's not quite that here. I'm hoping it's going to cool off in September, but not yet. I'd like for it to stay warm. But hopefully, for most of you, getting a little bit of reprieve, just enough reprieve. Show all the hard-earned fitness that you've gained the last few months while you've been working your tail off, making time to get out in the heat and the humidity, getting your swims, your rides, your runs in. And, sometimes they can be frustrating, but they will pay off. We swear. Seasonal EPO is around the corner where, again, all that hard work you put in during June, July, and August, you'll reap those benefits here shortly. And in a little bit, we hope you reap benefit from the show. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. Your time is very valuable, so we appreciate you tuning in today. We will cover it all. We'll do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts, race recaps, and also race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through as human beings on this planet, and also coaches and athletes ourselves. We also talk a lot about what our own athletes are going through. We both work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level triathletes looking to do their first sprint or even 5K, all the way up through elite level amateurs heading to Kona and everyone in between. And we'll use the feedback loop we have with them and their experiences and training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We will frequently use our Facebook group as well. Search that, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question. We'll let you right in. Great community, a lot of awesome people. Had a lot of traction here lately. I don't know if Facebook's doing like their little free like bump ads or like, hey, have you ever heard of Crushing Iron Group? So I had a lot of people go in there, but participate. Don't be a lurker. If you got a question, ask it. It's a great resource if you really want good, actionable experience feedback and not just BS sarcasm that you might get from other sports, other Facebook forums. Speaking of Facebook forums, I pulled up. This is how we always kind of weird out because Facebook and like your phone is so intelligent because it'll just listen to something and pop things up. Well, it popped up 3 groups for me. I think it was yesterday when I was trying to go to our group page, and it was 2 Ironman triathlete Facebook groups, and then there was a Facebook group on ironing.
Perfect.
It was like Ironman Triathlon 80-20 training, and then ironing, 43 members. And I almost wanted to enter and be like, you know what? Maybe this is my thing. Maybe I can kind of be, the popular guy for a change. I can hop into the ironing Facebook page. Like, I don't know what they talk about, how you iron and, what, the board you use, which is a whole different topic for a different day. How you iron pants. Anyway, I thought that was a little bit funny, but yeah, hop in our Facebook group. Sometimes we'll do Q&As in there as best we can to get through the questions that pop up. That's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads. We do have an agenda though, and that is to do our best to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
I feel like we talked about that before, and we were going to start a group called Crushing Ironing.
You and I did, because I am of the belief that when you're ironing, because growing up, like I went to private school, and then like if I ever went to something that like you had to dress up, because if you guys have met me, I don't dress up ever. But when you iron pants, most people use, and I think maybe it's suggested to use the pointy end, right, of the ironing board. No way. I use the square end for shirts and pants. Like you pull it through and you iron it. The more surface area, the better. And I think that's, one of those hotly contested things where people are just staunchly opposed to one and the other. And I am staunchly opposed to the pointing of the ironing board.
I can't remember, man. When I was back in corporate, all I remember is waking up late, pulling dirty pants out of my laundry basket, spraying them down, and then just iron them just enough so it would be fine. Anyway,
I'm surprised you even ironed them. I thought you just toss them in the dryer on a little low tumble with a little bit of
I've
warm
done that
heat,
a lot. Yeah,
shake them out, put them on.
Yeah, that was always fun. It was just, man, what a nightmare. I remember it was so bad. I used to go to dry cleaners for a while there too. I just couldn't deal. But anyway, so we're going to talk about your training. But actually, as you said that, like, I realized that I did kind of flip, I guess, the shark there. Because I was telling you how
slightly, but like big time.
How tired I felt because I'm having a big week. It's one of my bigger weeks, but I got to the pool late last night. But yeah, I was telling you how tired I was, and then immediately when the podcast came on, I said I was feeling great. I think that's like something to do with phoning a friend. I think there's something to be, because I do get a little fired up when we're getting on the podcast, and it's almost like it takes my mind away. You sit in your own head so much. Sometimes you're just sitting around and like not talking to anybody or whatever. But I think that's probably a good thing to do when you're feeling a little bit. You know what they say, like when you're on a race course, if you're starting to feel grumpy or whatever, you need some fuel. Maybe you need some conversational fuel if during your training. Just call a friend and say, "Hey, how's it going?"
Yeah, I mean, on the training course, I mean, I've heard a lot of athletes say that they got a kind of like a jolt of energy from one, thanking volunteers. Anytime you're expressing gratitude, I think it just kind of bumps your energy level anyway and bumps your mood. But then also, like, especially on the run course, people have said that they've gotten a whole lot out of like finding somebody that's in and around your pace and kind of like going through the same thing and just kind of having that camaraderie to not do it alone, because it is like the last 10 to 15 miles of a 70 or 5 miles of 70.3 and 10 to 15 were full are the darkest and loneliest, especially as you get like the sun goes down. And even if it's like a popular place, it can still get pretty damn lonely out there. Even early on, depending on how the course is drawn. I remember thinking that when I was we did Ironman Wisconsin 5 years ago, and you start off and as soon as you hit the trail that runs right there behind the college, I was like, there's really nobody out here. This is kind of lonely. And then you're just getting further and further and further and further away from downtown. You're like, it's kind of lonely. So no matter what time of day, if you're coming off the bike early or out there late, it can get lonely. And it's always good to have, other people or to see other people, right? And to be able to say, hey, good job, or, you're doing good, or acknowledge it. I think, like you said, it takes you out of your own head. And our head is, I think most people would agree, the most dangerous place to live, because most people aren't sitting there, building themselves up on a minute by minute basis. They're tearing themselves down, or they're worrying about something, or they're finding something to get anxious about, or they're anxious in general. And so, yeah, it's great to get out of your own head, because that's when, you get to live life, right? Instead of just, sitting on your couch and living inside your head. Is a dangerous place to be.
Super dangerous. That happened to me actually last year at the Chat Full. I ran into a guy at my pace on the North Shore, probably about 4 or 5 miles to go. And we were both in hunchback mode and looking at the ground and, just struggling through it. Like every half mile, one of us would look at the other one and just go, this sucks. And the other guy go, yeah, I know. Let's keep going. That was all it took. This sucks. Yeah, I'm with you, man. It was just like this bonding moment of weirdness. I have no idea who he was, but we made it. But yeah, man, getting out of your head is huge.
People bond over the weirdest things, and a lot of time it's just like obstacles, turmoil or hard times. That's what people bond over. They just the same thing. Yeah, same here. It's just rough. And yeah, it's like, especially in like transition, if you've ever volunteered in like T2, people get off the bike, people are always looking at each other like, you never hear much positivity besides like, whoa, I made it off the bike. I know I'm going to finish. It's like, why are we doing this? Or I never want to ride my bike again. Everybody's like, no one's like super pumped except to get off their bike and basically never see it again. They're like, just mess up my tri-bike transport ticket. And I don't care where it goes. I don't need to see it for a month. Or you just look at each other and you're like, did we pay to do this? What? I'm not sure why. And then of course, you make it through the marathon and you remember why, but it's always good. I think there's even been studies that showing gratitude or expressing gratitude in training and racing yields better results than being in your head and not thanking people and just generally being kind of a dick or a diva on the course. No one's got time for that, and neither do we.
I was even had that, like I said, I had a late swim last night, and it was just me alone in the pool, and I've been really and I'm not going to share it, but I've really been swimming with mantras lately because it really keeps me in the moment. And, you're not thinking about laps, you're not thinking about anything, and you're just kind of swimming with something positive in your head. And it's just, on a rhythm, and it's been kind of interesting to experiment with that because I think it does make swimming a lot easier, or just anything a lot easier. You're going through these long runs or rides or swims. And like, if your head starts drifting and you start thinking, a lot of people talk about, I solved my problems in the pool. And I think that's great too, especially when you can get into a positive problem solving mindset. But sometimes it can turn dark, in training. And I really do believe in, just kind of keeping positive thoughts in your head or whatever, as you're doing this kind of stuff. And, it can really help, man, especially when you just sit around a lot during the day and you're in your computer and you're tired. And that begs the question is like, are you really tired, or are you just mentally kind of drifting and not engaged with something? That's why I think it is great to have a phone call or somebody you can chat with real quick. And, it just shakes you out of your zone or whatever.
I tend to think most people aren't necessarily lonely and isolated, or they are that when they talk about like lacking energy, because everyone's the same thing. Like most people, 9 times out of 10, like you leave a conversation and you're absolutely like energized from it. Yeah. And, we just gotten to the point to where most people spend way too much time alone or not around anybody, or doing anything or having, meaningful conversations and getting out of your own head. And you just tend to, it makes you lethargic. Right. And then that's kind of like one of the things that I've had to work on specifically the last 2 or 3 weeks, or even just like when I'm really training well and I'm intentional, right, with my training, because a lot of people do this, and we encourage our athletes to like set an alarm and do this, and there for a period of time, especially like when Hayden's in school or whatever, I can not set an alarm, but I'm gonna wake up anyway at like 5 or 5:30. But what I found is that if I will just kind of, if I wake up and then open my laptop and then I see like 10 or 15 emails, my first inclination is, all right, I got to knock these emails out because then I'll have a clear plate. And then what happens is I, clean my plate of the emails, and then I'm like, man, I feel so, feel some more free, and I'm not doing, I'm so less stressed. Then I find something else to do. And then I find something else to do. And then it's 9 o'clock. And then it's 10 o'clock. And then we get with the podcast. I'm having the Zoom today. And I go to this, and I end up putting my workout on later in the day, and I just don't feel very good. Right. I'm lethargic, because what happens is you wake up, right, with a specific level of energy for the day. That's it. You have this set, kind of like we talk about stress levels and the amount of stress you have over the course of a race, and it's and energy and how you use it. Well, you wake up and you've got what you got. And then as soon as you start doing anything, it's depleted. And so I've always been, to be, upfront, it's like really terrible with like a work-life balance in the past, and especially with my own training and stuff. It's like, I'll do everything else. I'll put everything I have into work and through everything else. And then if I have time, I'll knock it out, and then what usually happens is by the time I get to a point to where I've freed up my day, I've done, all my responsibilities, I've done all the work I need to do, I've, done stuff around the house, I've, played with Hayden, my energy level is at a low to where my motivation also goes with it, right? We always talk about people that, frequently comment that they're like, I just don't know where my motivation's gone or my commitment level, and I just don't know what's wrong with me. And you're like, dude, like you're under an insane level of stress, right? You have to have energy to be able to be committed and be motivated, right? And we always talk about movement as medicine, right? And so I think what I've been doing the last 2 weeks when I've been training really well is and this will make you cringe, but I've set my alarm for 4:30 every day, with the intention of I'm not going to work until I work out, because what I've also found is that, and this is the kind of the way most of our workouts go, is training actually gives you energy, right? It doesn't zap you, right? It's not like I'm getting out in the morning, I'm doing a 4-hour hard intensity ride and a 30-mile run off the bike, and I'm trashing myself and I got to sleep the rest of the day. What I've found is that I actually wake up with a certain energy level, I do my training, and then I'm actually more energized throughout the rest of the day, right? To do the things you do around the house, to hang out with Hayden, to do my job and all these kind of things, which is the total opposite of how I've always kind of done things. I was like, hey, I'll start off, and then I'm going to do everything, and then it zaps your energy and zaps your energy and zaps your energy. And then it's a lot easier to skip a workout when you're low on energy, right? I just don't feel today. I'll do it tomorrow, right? Versus doing it the other way. And that has helped me a ton. Even though I can sleep in if I want to, I have found that just simply setting my alarm and being intentional and just saying, hey, I'm going to do this right when I get up in the morning. I'm going to head to the pool, or I'm going to hop on the bike. I'm going to get my running. This is what I'm going to do. And just being specifically intentional about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And then I have the whole rest of the day, and my energy is higher. And I've also done something for myself, right? So that puts me in even a better mood, right? Because I've taken time for myself, right? Because the first thing, reading Ryan Holiday's blog, he talks about, like, he wakes up and for the first hour he's awake or something like that, he doesn't even look at his phone. Doesn't look at his emails, doesn't look at anything. No, I'm not that level yet. But he was like, I just take time for myself, because as soon as you start doing things for other people, you're more likely to continue to do things for other people and for your job. And you're not going to take time for yourself. Then by the time you get to the part of the day where you want to take time for yourself, you're so drained from emptying out your cup to everyone else that you have nothing to give back to yourself. And so I know for me, and maybe a lot of other people struggle with this, is that, and I know a lot of people do, because we work with a lot of high, performing, professionals that work a ton, and they probably the same kind of, altered work-life balance, or they love to work, and it also takes time away and zaps your energy. But it is, I know for me, it has helped me tremendously in the last 2 weeks to one, I think also to be excited about a race, and kind of find a groove, but also to just be intentional with when I'm going to work out, why I'm going to work out, and take that time for me. And I think it's benefited me the rest of the hours of the day.
Well, first of all, it didn't make me cringe. It made me jealous that you're setting your alarm at 4:30, 4:15?
4:30. Yeah, 4:30 every day.
Yeah, and that's been on my plate. As I said, I'm trying to get up earlier, and getting up earlier is the first step, and then second step is actually starting to work out in the mornings to kind of adjust my, body to getting up at 6 and doing a swim, and then, riding all day and whatever. So it's been hard, but and I know you don't take naps, and I've been inching my workouts earlier and earlier during the day. I mean, for me, it's like noon, but I'm getting there. And what I find, like yesterday, though, it was kind of a struggle to even get out, and I had a run, and then I came back in. And I know you're not a big napper, but I'm struggling with naps a little bit. But a lot of times I'll just lay back on my back and close my eyes, and then kind of maybe half drift off for like 2 minutes or something. And it's amazing, because I'll just lay there, and then I'll just kind of feel like it does some amazing things. I don't know how that works, but I kind of lay there and go, all right, man, just pull it together and just get up and do it. And it's just like sort of laying there in your own peace for a few minutes really does a wonder for me, because it just sort of gets me going. And I don't know if it's just like we need that short break from everything for just a few minutes during the day sometimes, where you're not always on and you're not always looking at the next email and you're not looking at the next thing to do. And it's just a grind situation because training for triathlon is a grind. So it's like you're doubling up, your whole intensity all the time, it feels like. And it doesn't have to be that way, but I just look for moments where sometimes it's decompress or whatever you want to call it, and just enough to get yourself in the mood. And then, I like I said, I was tired. I didn't think I had it. I went down and had a really, for me, a pretty big swim and felt great, and, it's just weird, but it's almost like our body needs a little bit of maybe it's our mind, because that's what happens is you start getting in a rut during the day, and it's like, oh man. I mean, there's a lot of cultures have afternoon naps, and that's probably for a reason.
We need time. We need time away from to declutter, right? Like you talk about, like I just need. And listen, I'm not anti-nap. I just can't do it. Like I try, and I try hard, and then I get frustrated about 20 minutes in. And I'm like, why am I not napping? And then I get frustrated. Then I just stop napping. I wish I could nap. I think I've read one time that like the best nap you can take is to have like a small cup of coffee and then lay down and nap for 30 minutes. Because you wake up like energized and rested. But what I found, especially like in the last maybe 2 or 3 weeks, once I've started doing like the meditation, the breathing stuff, is that I'm not sleeping during it, right? I am sleeping better, but it's time away from all the noise, right? Like we live in a world where we do very little without some kind of distraction. Even like the simplest thing is running, right? Most people take music, right? Or a podcast, which nothing wrong with that. But for me, I know that I need it in order to be the best version of myself. I need things to go quiet. I need, because like a lot of times you wake up, and I'm not a huge Star Wars guy, and I know you're not either, but what I feel like our brains are most of the day from the time we wake up is like an X-wing plane in Star Wars basically dodging 38,000 like laser beam shots, red and green, from all over the world, right? From what you read in the news or social media or emails or text messages or stuff you're going with your family. Your brain is full and on like rapid speed action from the time you wake up, from the time you go to bed. You are always thinking about something, right? And a lot of times it's meaningless, right? Like you get distracted on Facebook and you're like, what am I even doing? How much time have I wasted, right? You just gave it all away by doing nothing, right? That we feed into that now and we do it when we work out, right? We do it, swimming is like the last frontier, but even now people are trying to, add in data metrics on your goggles, and and some people like to listen to music and do this, and on the bike it's like, Jesus, some people have like 3 bike computers going. They got Netflix on one screen, they got Trainer Road or Zwift or Rouvet or something they use on the other screen, and then they got their workout on one. I'm like, oh my God, like that, it stresses me out to have that many things at once, because frankly it's like you have that many more opportunities for something to go wrong. And then running's the same, right? I got to keep up with my, my run cadence and my heart rate, and then my pace. And then, I got my iPod in. It's like, you need time to just decompress, right? Because that's also when we do our best work. Like that's what people say, I have this great thought, or I was thinking about something when I swam today, because you're detached. You can't look at your phone. You can't listen to things. You can't check your email. It's just you and your mind and your thoughts. And that's when you come up with like your best ideas, right? Or these thoughts, you have these breakthroughs, or thinking of something that you've been trying to remember for a long time. Running is the same thing, right? For me. And that's why you hear people a lot also say, they tear up, they get emotional when they run. It's because like it's just amazing, I think, to me, how distant we've become from feeling things, because we are plugging holes constantly of thoughts and feelings and emotions that we have with irrelevant, useless, chaos, garbage, right? That we consume because we have to. And in order to be better, like you're talking about, just laying there with your eyes closed, it's good to kind of let your thoughts run wild, right? And that's kind of one of the things that I struggle with hating with sometimes is, like when we were growing up, we're gonna when we were growing up, when I was young, is like it wasn't like, hey, here's an iPad, here's a thing. It was like, I don't know what to do. I'm bored. Okay, well, go be in your own mind. Like, I don't say that to him, but I'm like, just be independent and do whatever you want to do on your own time. Like, don't just sit there and watch a screen. Like, be creative. Like, he'll do Legos or he'll do these things. I'm like, whatever, because I think it's a great way to learn and grow, but you got to figure things out. And so I think when we want to be intentional and we want to do better, we have to give ourselves that space to disconnect. And even if it's not like disconnecting alone, it's disconnecting with someone, right? Like you're talking about, like you and I, like hopping on a phone call for an hour, right? We're not looking at our phones. We're not checking emails. We're not in Training Peaks. We're not listening to music. We are present and we're getting something with like going on a run with a buddy, right? Or a ride. Like, and you're not looking at your metrics. You're not, hey man, I got to quit this conversation. We got to go hold, 200 watts for 30 minutes. I'll be right back. No, you just have that conversation. So you're getting the best of both worlds. You're having conversation and movement all at the same time. And to be honest with you, I do think that, especially in the last 2 years when most people have been, riddled with isolation and loneliness, and we all, you were given an excuse and oftentimes praised for staying in your house and not being social and not doing this. We've had multiple conversations with, parents on our street about, kids that are going into second and third grade that, in 2020, they weren't going to school. They didn't leave their house, and how they're struggling in certain areas. And as adults, the same thing, right? Social skills have lacked. Your ability to have conversation is, I think taking a step backwards. And the easiest thing to do inside your own house is just to pick up your phone or open up a screen and lose yourself in it. And as a coach, I have had a higher percentage of athletes in the last 2 or 3 years talk openly about excessive drinking or depression or anxiety. And I don't think it's any coincidence. And I think a lot of it has to do with spending too much time in our own head, right? Because, like, again, it's the most dangerous place to live, right? Because it isn't really constructive. We just live there and we think about bad things, or we assume bad things, and then we go train, and we should be giving ourselves time to feel and be energized. But even then, yes, you can do a workout. And again, there's nothing wrong with watching Netflix on a ride, or using a platform to your riding, or listening to music on a run, or an iPod in the pool. But I do think sometimes, like, we need nothing. We need nothing. We just need space, and we need to quiet the noise in our head to be intentional and present and to feel, instead of just trying to numb things with chaos and distractions.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. And I mean, there's a lot of people that think meditation is more restorative than actually sleeping. And it's interesting. I don't know how that works or why it works, but I can kind of see it. And you're doing a lot of meditation. I think that's really cool. And, I think what people have to remember about that is what you were just talking about is, like, all these thoughts going on, and people always sit down and they say, I'm not good at it. I have too many thoughts going on in the mind. And that's what it's all about, is the practice of meditation is just allowing those thoughts to come in and letting them go, and just not acknowledging them. And you don't have to do anything about it. You just have to acknowledge it. So it is so easy to just go on and get lost. And it's a distraction, obviously, to go on your phone and stuff like that. And just, I mean, since I've moved here, and, I've been going up to our lake cottage with my mom, and she has the greatest neighbors, and they're always kind of walking in the door and walking out and bringing food over and doing all this. There's just people around. They're good people. And that little thing has just been a game changer for me, because it's just so nice to have, there's really nothing intense going on. It's just people around. And that's why I was actually happy to hear that you say you were helping your neighbor this morning when you had to delay the podcast. And I'm like, oh man, he's over there shoveling mulch and doing all this kind of stuff. And then you tell me you're just helping him fill up a tire with your air pump. But it is nice.
Also to say, like, I don't know a lot about a lot, but I can pump up a bike tire.
Yeah, you're like, one of the best. So can you help me with my bike tire?
Unclog a drain or do some, hard things around the house. Like, I'm not your guy. But if you need something on your bike done, give me a call. I can be I can help save the day.
Well, it's
But
just
it
a
is
cool thing.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's a cool thing to have a neighbor or people around that, even if it's just to take your mind off of the grind sometimes and just, be face to face with people. And I want to just, because I thought of something, that I think is a big deal with a lot of people. It's like, especially during the heat. And like I was talking to you before the podcast about, the heat. Yeah, it's tougher. And we got to quit, I think, always using it as an excuse and look at it as an opportunity, because I've never been in I shouldn't say that. I've been in a couple of races that haven't been hot on the run, but most of them, even if it's in the 70s or 80s, it gets hot out there in the run, and this is your opportunity. So like you said, don't expect at your best performances or whatever, but just understand how to, I always use it as an opportunity to kind of like regulate my body system or my temperature or something like that. I try to do it in a way that I'm not going to get super hot. And it's just like, I've been thinking about like, I got to stop or whatever. And no, I just got to slow it down. I'm working on slowing it down. And I think that kind of thing can pay off in races too, and just a quick thing about music. I have been using music a little bit more lately just to keep it, I don't know, I'm just finding it enjoyable, and I go through that and we talk about it a lot, but as I get closer to the race, and there's some long stuff I won't be using it, and I just kind of use it on the trainer or whatever, and maybe for some shorter runs. But I think the thing about music, what I do like about it when I'm training and running usually is that it kind of helps me, be looser and be in, like look for a rhythm. And then I'm consciously thinking about that rhythm in my stride, because I think a lot of triathletes, especially getting off the bike, we're all so stiff, you know what I mean? And there's something to be said for being able to just kind of relax into that run groove, because most triathletes at the end, especially towards the, marathon, including me, they're, the running, you're like, man, is that really running? It's like, it just looks like a stiff, kind of mechanical kind of movement. And I just think a lot of times we give up on the flow and the freedom of running because it just hurts a little bit. And then we just start like cringing a little bit tighter, and our body gets tighter and tighter as we go. And I think that's one of the challenges of running long distance like that, is to be able to just keep letting it go and keep rhythm running and flowing with your breath and your stride, and not listening, you're getting out of your head again. It's sort of like, let your body do what it can do. So I just find that an interesting point.
No, I agree. And like, listen, everything is good in moderation. Right. Like, if I'm on the trainer and I've got so yesterday, pretty good example. I did a really hard ride and also a pretty hard run for me. And on the ride, I used music during the intervals just because I can lose myself in the intervals, but they also bring up I don't listen to music just to listen to music. I listen to music because either a song means something to me or it makes me feel a certain way. Not to just have background noise. I'm not the guy that's I can't go on my long rides during my run because my iPod's dead. That's not me. But a lot of people are like that. They have to have that thing. I'm I don't like that. I'm not I have to have it, or I'd like to have it sometimes during intervals. And then sometimes I don't, because that's what happened on my run. I had a hard run and it's been cooler out, and I kind of want to use it to gauge a few things. And I specifically didn't take my phone with me. So I went no phone, no nothing, no water. And I was like, because I need to, if I'm going to race, right? And it's been a while for me since last July. So it's been a year since I've raced. If I'm going to race, then what I need to do is figure out, am I ready? Fitness is one thing, like we talk about a lot of time, you can have a great fitness, but have terrible execution, right? But it's the conversations you have to have during the race and how you feel that make the difference, right? That allow you to either get every ounce out of what you have or not. And so when I race, when I start the run for a 70.3, at least, when I start to run, I just find an effort level just below red line that I feel like I can hold for a long period of time. And I just stick with it. And it's very uncomfortable. It's just like, it's annoyingly uncomfortable, but you can also be like, I can slow down, but I think I can also hold this. And you're like kind of grimacing. You're like, damn it. Like, I wish I had to slow down, but if I do, it's by choice. But I know I can keep going. And so when I did this run, I wanted to have that conversation with myself, which was get to a point to where I'm not going all out, but I'm pretty uncomfortable. But I also, if I'm being super honest with myself, I know I can keep going. And like, damn it, I wish I could. Sometimes when you're doing that, you're like, I wish I just blew up and I had to walk, right? Because it's hard. It's hard to stay focused. It's hard to like, pace yourself and to be in that really, really uncomfortable spot. And sometimes be like, I could take music, but that just like kind of drowns out the conversation. You might get some. Because I do think music is like a drug sometimes when you're doing a workout. Like, it can just give you like the next level to hit an interval that you wouldn't have hit if you weren't listening to anything.
Oh,
but when you're
definitely.
racing, you don't have that. You have nothing. And so yesterday I started this run, and I was going to, again, go out just 30 minutes and run, kind of a tempo, a little bit harder than a tempo effort. And I went out and I started off easy. I was like, I feel pretty good. This isn't that bad. And then the second mile, so I started out at 7:19, then a 7:11. And then my third mile, I came back to cross where I could turn to go home. And my first thought was, all right, I said 30 minutes, but a 5K is probably fine. And it's those conversations. Like, if I'm listening to music, I probably wouldn't have had that. I just want to get, the music's jamming me out. This is my song, baby. Here I am. And so I had this opportunity to turn right to head home or to keep going. And then once I keep going, there's really isn't a turnaround until I want to turn around. And I just told myself, I was like, nope, we're going to keep going. And so I dropped to 7:16 that mile, and then got my shit together and dropped it back down to, I think, like 7:04. But the moral of the story was that I had to think the whole time. I had to feel the whole time. I had to have these conversations of, stop, call it easy, 5K is fine, right? Or do what you intended to do because you know you can keep going. And then I actually ended up feeling better after I had that conversation with myself. But when it gets closer to race time, again, that's why I think long rides and runs and swims, like, you need to have to, again, everything's good in moderation, but you can't be dependent, right? Like, if you're dependent on you're doing it on the trainer, if you're dependent on having music, if you're dependent on, perfect weather, then you're not preparing for race day. And I knew that I needed that to get that feeling back in me in a safe way that was like, all right, it's time to start having these conversations internally to see where you are. If you're giving up early, we got more things to work on, from the mental and emotional, like, preparation side. If you can feeling good, then you're showing you got some decent fitness. But the most important thing is that fitness is irrelevant if you can't extract all of it from your body, right? And then that's where those conversations come in. Just slow it down. You've already got there. You said, Robbie, this is just a fun one, right? You're not going to PR. You just want to have a good time. Boom, built-in excuse. Right. But you always know that, right? You're the only one when you finish a race. You're the only one, the only person, no one else, not a coach, not a spouse, not a fellow spectator, nobody. You are the only one that knows how honest you were with yourselves and how much effort you put forth during the race. Did you quit early? Did you make excuses? Did you push on? Did you self-sabotage? Did you pace it right? And did you really, really, kind of fend off all the negative thoughts and push forward? Because frankly, I don't think anyone can do that at every race. I think sometimes, no matter what kind of race you are, no matter how accomplished you are, again, we started the podcast by saying the most dangerous place to live is inside your head. Mm-hmm. And if you don't practice fending off those conversations, fending off those feelings, fending off those negative vibes, fending off those excuses, because you got music and you got podcasts and you got distraction, you got whatever, the moment they happen, you're gonna be like, whoa, I wasn't ready for this conversation. And then you're kind of just left on the defensive. And so I think it's important for a lot of reasons, not just for race day, but to force yourself into those moments of, again, did I learn a lot about myself from a fitness standpoint yesterday? Not really, because it's not long enough to learn. But what I did learn is I'm in a pretty good spot when it comes to the conversation that I know I'm going to have with myself on race day, which is keep moving forward at this pace, or man, it'll feel good to slow down.
There's so much there, man. The head, I did yesterday, my run was some hill repeats, and when you start, sometimes, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you can just clip right into it, but like for me, the beginning of my run sometimes is like, I'm seriously going to do an Ironman right now? Cause I'm just like dying the first mile. I went cause I run from my house here sometimes, and there's just right away, there's just a hill. It's kind of a long, slow climb. And I was literally going, what, it's like, I try to do these things, and I was like, all right, well, slow it down, ease it back, do it over 1 more minute, just keep doing, and that kind of stuff. And I do think there's a really big advantage to kind of setting little benchmarks within workouts and things like that, where they're little targets. And for, a lot of times that's, like at the swim, last night it's like, yeah, all right, one more lap, it's like, I got that, or whatever. It's like 1 more 500, whatever. But for running, it's kind of always something I'm like, all right, chill out for a while, calm it down. Because I'm really been working on this idea of, going hard on some hill repeats, and then really, like last night, I had an hour, and I got done sort of with 10 minutes left, and it would have been real easy just to kind of pack it up and walk home. And I'm like, you know what? No, I'm going to just go find this like thing again where I feel good and chill on my cool down, because we talked about cool downs and zone 2 riding and zone 1 riding and things like that. And I think there's really some power in actually finding that truthfully and knowing that you're in it, and finding that all day pace after you think you're shelled. Because what happened was, man, those cool downs are really important, because they can kind of bring you back to that place where you should be in a lot of times during the race. And it's that feeling that you can grind into your body that's like, oh, all right, I just ran hard for an hour basically, and now I have more left. And, you don't run hill repeats during an Ironman. You don't run hard, that kind of hard up the hills and stuff like that. So, you put in extra work. But I don't know. I've just been looking for those little things where even on the trainer, if I get to the hour and 30 mark, I was just like, all right, just give me another minute. Just do 1 more minute, just to kind of push it over a little bit, just to keep grinding that thought process into your mind. It's like, give me 1 more mile here, or get me to the next aid station, or get me to, now that I'm starting to learn the Wisconsin course, which is nice, I know what's coming up. So I'm like, all right, just, stick with it, get through there. And then you got some downhills and all that kind of stuff. And I do think there's some real power in breaking up your workouts, and that a lot of times that's really why I like doing repeats and loops and things like that, because I'm always like, well, I got 1 more loop in me or whatever, it's just like get here and get another loop, rather than how far am I going to run today? I'm just going to go all the way out here and then be like stuck in no man's land. But those little mind tricks like that are very, very interesting, and it's just so weird sometimes how we can be training this hard and feel completely like we're a joke in mile 1 of a run. It's like unbelievable.
I had that feeling this morning. I went out and left the house at 5:15, and after feeling really good yesterday, I took like the first mile, and I was like, oh my God, I went from, I'm getting some pretty decent shape, to this morning I was like, I got work to do. It's like, because you're always feeling something different. And again, I think it's one of those things that I think is incredibly underrated, and I know we talked about it on a lot of podcasts, but I don't think it can be overstated that the inability or ability to have those conversations internally and fight through them instead of give into them is what makes or breaks races.
Yep.
It just does. And we talked about before, you got trainers and gamers. Gamers are the ones that can have those conversations. Are like, I hear you, I'm ignoring you, but I hear you though, but it don't bother me. And they keep going. Like you have to kind of be, not mindless, but you have to you can't mind it. And a lot of people do. They take so much credence, and they take their negative thoughts and stuff have so much power over them that they just wilt under the pressure. And they wonder why on race day, they can't do it. This is uncomfortable. There's a reason you should train to do things that are uncomfortable, right? Not the whole time, right? Because that'll just drive you into the ground. But you got to find wins, not just wins as in, I was reading that a few things, like I'm technically off this week, but you got a program next week. And so as I was programming a couple of rides, you kind of look at another ride and you're like, yeah, I didn't think I'd be able to do this, but I did it. Yeah. And you're like, that's a huge win, right? Because you're not just stockpiling a fitness gain, you're stockpiling a mental win. And the ability you have to have mental wins when you go into it, right? We've all had workouts like that go the opposite, right? You go into a workout and you're like, dude, I'm about to nail it. And then you get just absolutely owned. And you like stop and you tuck your tail between your legs and you walk your ass home. Then you have the other ones when you're like, God, I don't even know why I'm doing this. I feel terrible. And you hop on the bike or you get in the pool or you lace up your shoes and you get out the door. And after about 20 minutes of getting your legs loosened up, you're like, oh, who is this? Who is this that I brought along with me today? Is this Prefontaine or is this, Lance Armstrong? I'm feeling pretty saucy today. And you have the best workout ever, right? Because you can't predict any of it. And so you always have to be willing to put yourself in those situations. But again, when you're like, man, I didn't think I'd have it today, but I had it. And two things happen right there is like, one, you did something that you didn't think or were unsure was going to be as a win. Kudos to you already, right? Because most people, they only do things that they're going to get an absolute guaranteed victory out of it. Like, I don't really do it. I want to win, or I want to have a great day. I'm not going to do that. You got out there, you took the risk, right? And then you surprised yourself. In those moments and those decisions, those feelings, they build up, right? It's like the snowball effect. They gain momentum. Then on race day, because you talk about it a lot too, is like you go through feeling incredible and feeling horrible all within like 2 minutes. And then it just rotates for the rest of the race, right? You feel great. I feel terrible. I'm the best. I'm the worst. I can do this. I'm never going to finish. Like you have all these feelings going up one hill, right? And then, you're going down the hill and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to dodge. You're like, oh my God, this is so fun. Or I'm going to crash. You have it's just all day long. And so many people get lost in these conversations and thoughts and feelings. And then what happens is, and this is the most dangerous piece, is that they latch themselves to one and never let go, and then disregard all of the thoughts or feelings. It could be the good one, right? Which isn't bad, but if you lock on to, right, that feeling in mile 10 of the ride, if you're doing a 7.3 or a full, and you're like, I have got it today. You're like, I'm not even like a third to the race right now. Do I really have it today? Or does it feel great right now because it just got started? Because you might be going way over your, perceived exertion or heart rate or watts of the day. And then by mile 40, you're like, my numbers, I'm not feeling too great, but I've got it today, right? And then you end up over biking and you have a terrible run. Or you latch onto this feeling in mile 10 of like, this isn't my day. Got kicked in the goggles. This is not my day. It all went downhill as soon as it started the swim, and you're like, what? Like we talk about it a lot. It's the spilled cup of coffee thing. Oh, there goes my day. Really? Like you just started. Like you're 1 minute into your day and it's done. Like it's not getting so attached to one thing. It's just letting things pass through, right? I see you, I hear you. I'm just not having any kind of actionable thoughts or reactions to it. I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. And the more you can practice that, the more situations you can put yourself in, that is, again, not being drowned out by, excess noise or movies or, your phone or music. That kind of like, again, sometimes music is like a drug. It can just take you to another level, take you to a different place. But sometimes we just need to be in the place we are, right? Like, that's where we get ourselves in so much trouble. Like, you're sitting on the couch and you're like, man, life is perfect. I got nothing. Let me pick up my phone and see how much a disaster the rest of the world is. You're like, what? What am I doing right now? But that's what people do. Like, we can't just sit and be with our thoughts and just let things pass in and pass out, right? And then be okay with that. We have to interject. And racing is so much, mental warfare against you, right? It's an individual sport. It's you. It is 100% you. And so like when you talked in the beginning about finding somebody that kind of have, a conversation with on the course, or a guy that you're kind of bunny hopping with on the bike, or even walking to the water, right? Like going to the swim start with a group of people that you're friends with, not just yourself and your own thoughts, because then you're just having a conversation, right? You're having a good time, you're smiling, you're taking yourself out of your own head. And that's like, I think one of the biggest differences of me kind of, I guess, post sober now versus when I wasn't, is when I would go into transition for a lot of reasons, I just kind of put my headphones in and just stayed in my own head. And now I kind of just make a specific focus of like, hey, how you doing, man? Hey, how many races have you done? Like, because it gets you out of your own head, right? Because the less time you're there, the less opportunity there is to, have these negative thoughts come in. Negative thoughts come in, and it's hard to do. It is definitely not easy. I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it by any stretch, but it is important, not just to work out the heart, but to work out the brain.
Yeah, man. I've always looked at racing as the goal for me is meditation and motion, right? It's being in the breath, it's being in the moment, and just kind of like you're saying, letting those thoughts come and go, and just letting them go. And then I've always banked on race energy, as you know, as about 25% of my training. But it is nice to know, like, if you know some people are going to be at, certain spot or whatever, you got that coming up. And I think for me, that's almost like if you're used to just being in your own world and you're breathing. I used to be so intense and just be like, I got to be focused this whole race and try to, but like, you're not stopping, but like enjoying seeing your friends and family at certain places on the race course is almost like taking a little nap. It takes your mind away for a minute and, gives you like a little breakup in all that intense focus. It's really difficult to stay in the moment for, 12 to 15, 17 hours or whatever. So I think it is good to have that kind of camaraderie, that, race energy and all that kind of stuff on the course, and just use it and not be so like hyper tense and serious about the whole damn day. I leave that to the pros, I guess.
Yeah, we leave a lot to them to do. It's their job, it's their livelihood. For us, it's fun, right? It's supposed to be fun and energizing and putting yourself in a situation again to learn about. And I think we even kind of mentioned this, in the podcast earlier this week, is, talking about, instead of finding your why, but the why not is like, because the more you can have those conversations with yourself, the more you're training your brain to resist the negative thoughts and to just ignore them, right? And most people don't have, and listen, picking up your phone instead is not combating it. It's just being in denial, right? And it's just putting it off until one day you can't, and you're like, oh my God, I'm left with my own thoughts. Like, what am I going to do? It's a hard place to be. And I think society's taken a massive step back in the last few years in terms of accessibility to conversations. I have yet to see, and the people I talk to, that, most AA rooms are not even close to the way back that they used to be. Like I shared that with, I think maybe this time last year, that every time I go back to Nashville, I go back to the same room that I got my very first 24-hour chip in. And when I lived in Nashville, it was my place, the only place I went to for meetings. And there's some days I would go in and you had to get there 20 minutes early or you weren't going to get a seat. You'd have to go into the overflow room because that's how big the meeting was. You've been in that room before. It seats at least 50 minimum. And you had to get there early if you wanted to be in the main room, or you went to the overflow room. And it was just jam packed. People outside, people in there congregating, fellowship, community. And the last time I was in town, I went and it was like crickets. It was like maybe 15 or 20, no need for an overflow room. And I asked some of the guys that was like, is this like something going on? I was like, am I missing something? They're like, no, ever since, we went to Zoom, on, during the pandemic and when everybody was isolating, is that people don't come back anymore for a variety of reasons. I think, a lot of people, found other ways to do different things, but it was sad to me. And I was like, man, that's like the one place that I could feel at home with. If you're in recovery, like you get it. It's like you go into a room and you're like, I feel like I know everyone here because we're all, again, going back to kind of the suffering on the course. Like we all have this one thing we suffer with that we can totally relate to, right? And we're open and we're honest. We're not strangers. And a lot of that in a lot of places has been taken away, and or not taken away, but we haven't gone back. People find reasons to not do it versus feeling like they really, really need to. And I think there's, this triathlon podcast hasn't been so much about triathlon today, but it is about doing better within the sport, and not just within the sport, but within ourselves, right? Because we are the people that do the sport. Like we say this all the time, you coach the person first and the athlete second, because they're a person 24 hours a day, they're an athlete, and they do training some of the time. And these are things you can do. These are principles you can use. These are things you can do that are actionable to not just to be a better triathlete and be a better racer, right? Not just a trainer, but a gamer, but to live life in a much more fulfilling way, to set your phone down and walk out the house without it and leave it and walk down the street, or, go ride bikes with nothing and just look and feel and breathe and observe, right? And see different things when you're not staring at a small screen, or you're not sitting inside, right? Or I can't do this. It's like, you can do it, right? Like you can, and you have to put yourself in these conversations or these situations to have these conversations internally, but also in person and physically. If you, in my opinion, if you really want to get the best out of your life, to be fulfilled is to not be void. And I think we are, it's like filling a container with water versus filling it with air, right? There's substance there with the water. You can feel it, you can see it, versus just kind of like, I'm going to fill it with something that looks empty and you can't see it, but it just gives you the illusion that it's full. And that is what we do with a lot of things in our life these days. And it's become, unfortunately, I think the status quo. But we got into the sport to push ourselves, to challenge ourselves, to get out and do things regardless of whatever. And I've always, struggled sometimes with that. Just make time to get outside and do it. In the last few weeks, I've been like, it's 5:15. I leave the house and it's pitch black outside. I know it's maybe not the safest thing to do, but we got plenty of street lights, but there's no one else out there. No one. And I'm like, man, this is it. This is so much fun. Or I could go sit in the basement and watch Netflix and pedal. And when I come back from like an easy ride, a lot of times I'm more energized than when I'll be on the train or something to do downstairs. It's just small decisions we have to make to kind of give ourselves the courage and the confidence to make another one, and to make another one, and to make another one. And it'll improve your life, and it'll improve your racing.
Yep.
I hope so.
No, I think so. I mean, I think, you said it's not necessarily about triathlon, but I'm always a big, the mental side of triathlon and how it crosses over into life and things like that. And I just think it's so important for training and racing. I mean, I'm always struggling with like flipping a switch mentally. But anyway, I have a quick update from my new training center, Boca del Vista. What is it called? Boca del Vista. I just wanted to.
Have they banned you from the pool yet because it's getting too like overcrowded with your striptease you do on deck?
No, they love me in there. They love me. The pool is so nice. It's got huge windows. It feels like it's outside, and there's never a lane problem. So I'm lucky. But after a swim the other day, I'm making a lot of good friends there. It's kind of a retirement community. And I after a swim, I was like, normally a lot of times I've been sitting in the sauna, and so I dry my shorts off just sitting there, right? And but this time I didn't have time, so I'm like, I'm gonna go over to that swimsuit extractor thing, and I walk over there, and just as I got there, there's a guy coming with his swimsuit, and I'm like, you go ahead, and older guy, and he's like, all right, thank you, young man, or whatever, and he puts it in there. I have never seen anyone hold that lid down as long as this guy did. Like, to the point where it's usually like what, 15 seconds you do it.
Oh yeah, and it'll shake your body. I mean, their things they're violent. He
kind of went for like 20 seconds and then 30, and then he pulled it up. I'm like, here we go, and he goes, and he pushed it back down again. And that thing just kept going forever. I legitimately said, all right, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'll just come back and whatever. I went to the bathroom. I came back. He's still at it with this thing. I'm like, what is he doing, man? That suit is gonna be shredded. And I just gave up, dude. I just threw it in my bag and left.
I guarantee you, he's got his own locker there.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's like that's another thing, man. I'm sitting and the other day I go in there and it's a nice, like they call it executive style locker room, with the wood lockers and you can punch in your own code and it's like all this stuff. And I'm getting ready and there's a guy sitting like on the same bench but down on the road a little bit, clipping his toenails. Is this like out of control or what?
Oh God.
Letting them fall right on the floor and they're just all over the floor. I'm like, this is not cool, man. That's got to be like, you can't do that, can you?
Apparently in the executive locker room, you can. Yeah, apparently in the executive locker room, you can.
Anything's cool.
That's stuff like that. I mean, listen, the stuff. I mean, we do a whole podcast on the things you shouldn't see in locker rooms. I mean, it's like sometimes I see people. I'm like, what? Like in the comfort of your own home, whatever, man. And still, it's suspect.
Oh, they don't care. This is like. This is how I imagine the locker room at the Masters or something like me. And, they just don't give a shit about anything. I own this place.
Exactly. Peasants will come clean up after me. Yeah. Oh, God. It's clipping the tongue. Yeah. You see weird stuff in the locker room. I mean, you and I know that from hitting up the downtown YMCA locker room in Nashville. You see some weird.
Oh, yeah.
You want to learn about the world, go to the locker room because you'll learn about everybody and everything. We hope you learned a little bit today, not about everything, but about some things, and you enjoyed it. We appreciate you. We love you. Hope you have a great weekend of racing and training. As always, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you're looking for camps from next year, we have, I think, 2 that are still open, so click on those. If you have any questions about our camps, you can email c26operations@gmail.com. If you're looking for coaching help the rest of the year, you can click on our coaches tab, find the coach that's right for you, and we'll help you out the rest of the year and maybe even next year. And as always, if you need anything from Mike, he's available, CrushingIron@gmail.com. If you need anything from me, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. Thanks for picking up my energy.
Hey, always, man.
All right. See you later.